This is the biggest story, however. It's the left-back situation. Interesting piece from Sean Irvine as well today, talking about Manchester United, kind of winding people up online as well about Newcastle fans losing their minds over Manchester United now preparing to move for Lewis Hall. His stance and talk on this is very similar to what we've said before, and it's another journalist coming out and saying the same thing again. Manchester United are willing to watch the dominoes fall, be patient, and wait for the opportunity to arise for that third midfielder. They are very comfortable in waiting this out, so be prepared for that. It's like we said this morning with Chouameni. Him coming back next week from that international break after the World Cup could trigger a lot of movement in that area, whether we get there or not with him. But patience is the word. At left back, though, it looks like this week could actually be a big week. And I know you're going to say the same thing again. Adam, you say this every single week. Of course I do. We're talking about the news here and hope that Man United actually move and get this deal done. The reason why the left-back situation is ready to move and is now in position to do so is because that opportunity has now come about, where Manchester United have obviously been told by Lewis Hall that he is open to the move. And everybody's reporting on this, of course, as we've reported over the last couple of days now. And emitting today, this afternoon, saying that Manchester United's hunt for Lewis Hall, again, like everyone else, is genuine. We've always said it. The Athletic has always said that Lewis Hall is a target for United. He's admired at the club. We know all of the inside detail and what's going on. The bid is coming. There is a huge opportunity here for Manchester United to take Lewis Hall if they really want to go for him and then buy another midfielder.
United move for Lewis-Skelly. Could a bid go there? And how does that impact Lewis Hall? Is it Lewis-Skelly or is it Lewis Hall? We will talk about that, of course. Also, new deal for JJ. There's talk of that this morning. A little bit of confusion around that, actually, but we will talk about that. What's going on with the striker situation? What's going on in the midfield? Also, what's going on with Lewis Hall? Also, I saw a comment last night, which I think is the comment of the summer from one of you. I want to delve into that. Fantastic. Talking about Man United's transfer window and how this fan base just falls into the same trap all the time where, you know, you win a pre-season game and everything's fine and the Glazers are off the hook. I think there's a large element of truth to that. The standards continue to fall, I suppose. But look, there are positives. And before I get into the Lewis-Skelly story, I just want to say as well, I think with JJ yesterday, it was very exciting because he's 15 and everyone talks about him. I just didn't think I don't think I did really talk about Thwaites enough. And I just want to say right at the start of the show, just to give it a bit of a profile, everything I've been told about Thwaites sort of came to pass yesterday, quite literally. I don't spend a lot of time watching youth football because I've seen so many players in youth football that don't look like they're going to make it and they do. And I've seen so many players in youth football that look like they're going to make it and they don't. So it's always about what happens when they mix it with the first team. And from that little cameo from Thwaites, exactly what I'd been told did happen. He is a press-resistant player who moves the ball so quickly, he's really hard to deal with. And I think we saw that in the 10 minutes. Every time he got the ball, he moves it before a player can get near him. That's an incredibly good asset to have if he can continue that through his career. Now, I'm not saying Thwaites is going to be a Man United starter and the next Paul Scholes or anything like that. But I do think that amongst the excitement of what happened yesterday, that was a very interesting start for Thwaites. And if we didn't have JJ, we'd all be talking about Thwaites. And I have been talking about Thwaites, and you have been talking about Thwaites for a few weeks now. So it was good to see him. I'd like to see him build on it. And I do think he's going to be a player that Michael Carrick really likes, because Michael Carrick was that type of player as well, who played the pass, the right pass, picked quickly, and was very press resistant because he would move the ball quickly. So I thought he did very, very well. Okay, let's get into the transfer news. We're going to talk about Lewis-Skelly this morning. So lots and lots of stories about Arsenal looking to sell a few players to generate funds. We've seen Trossard go. We know that they're going to try and move Martinelli on. Lewis-Skelly is back on that list again. Man United are therefore being linked with Myles Lewis-Skelly this morning. He is seen as a viable option for United and one that they will explore if Arsenal are looking to sell at the right price. Look, I can see this being another Andre Santos. If we sign Lewis-Skelly, it's not the one we want, but I can see people going, oh, you know, it's a good signing. It could be a good signing. So I'm not going to sit here and say Lewis-Skelly would be the worst signing in the world. But this is sort of what I've been talking about the last 48 hours. There's a lot of talk around Lewis Hall and he wants to join Man United and Man United want him. But I just feel, is this not the story of the summer? Mateus Fernandes wants Man United. Man United want him, but we sign Andre Santos. Man United want Elliot Anderson. They want Tchouaméni, but they sign Tielemans. Not to say that Tielemans and Santos aren't good players, but we run this story of we want this player, and we end up with this player. And I don't think this is acceptable, because if we sign Lewis-Skelly, what are we doing? Killing two birds with one stone? He can play midfield. He can be the third midfielder, and he can also be the left back. And that, to me, is cheap. Like, we need a specialist midfielder and a specialist left back. And I don't think Lewis-Skelly is either of those things. I also think that buying a player from Arsenal, why has he not made it at Arsenal? Why would Arsenal be willing to sell him? If he's so good, why are Arsenal willing to sell him? Now, you could say the same thing about Santos. Why have Chelsea done it? And he could still be a really good player for us. But also, I think the final thing for me is, why have we become a football club that wants to fund Arsenal signing players we should be signing, like Bruno Guimaraes, like maybe Vinicius Jr.? So I don't want... Sorry, there's somebody in the chat here. Thank you, James. You're an absolute legend. Get rid of idiots like that. We're not even talking about Real Madrid. I just think that with regards to Lewis-Skelly, I don't want to fund Arsenal. I don't mind funding Newcastle. I think they're on the way down, but I don't want to fund Arsenal. I don't want to take players from Arsenal. And I think he is a good player, and I think he could come to United and be a good player, but it just screams to me of he can play left back and midfield, and we just save money. And I'm never going to applaud the club for saving money when they put us into debt and they need to save money. You know, if Man United do something noble and we need to save money, I'd go, you know, we need to save money. But, you know, there's a very interesting comment from Andy Mitten, actually, yesterday after the game. He was being interviewed. And he said that he was talking about Lewis Hall. And he was saying that Man United are interested, Lewis Hall is interested, you know, all the stuff we've already heard. But he said, you know, the difficulty is going to be the fee that Newcastle demand. And we've seen already this summer players that probably would like to come to Manchester United, but Man United just can't pay those prices. Elliot Anderson, Mateus Fernandes. And maybe that'll be the same with Lewis Hall. And, you know, I don't want to... Some people are okay with it, but I don't want to go, oh, it's okay to miss out on Lewis Hall and get Lewis-Skelly because he can play two positions. Why can't Man United afford Elliot Anderson, by the way? You know, Andy Mitten's saying it in an interview, and he wasn't, you know, patting the Glazers on the back by any means. He was saying, you know, that there's mixed feelings about that. He did acknowledge it. But why have we got people on the news now saying Man United can't afford Elliot Anderson? Man United can't afford Mateus Fernandes. Man United can't afford Lewis Hall. Have we ever been given an explanation for that? Or is it now just part of the Manchester United fan base psyche that, you know, some of us resist it and say, hold on a minute, I don't find that acceptable. But there are people in the fan base who just go, well, we can't afford it. And we're all meant to go, oh, that's all right. Why can't we afford it? Why can't we afford £116 million? Why can't we afford £85 million? There is an answer. I'm throwing it out there. Why is it okay for Man United fans to be so unambitious and lower the standards and actually use it as a way to argue with other United fans? Well, we can't afford those sort of players. Have you ever thought why we can't afford that? Have you ever thought why Real Madrid, PSG, Arsenal can afford it and Man United can't? Have you ever remembered that Man United is meant to be the Real Madrid of England? We are meant to be the PSG of England. We are meant to be the Bayern Munich of England. Why are people talking on national news about Man United can't afford Elliot Anderson, can't afford Mateus Fernandes? Why can't we afford it? Why has it become the norm now to just say United can't afford it? Why is it the norm to accept that Man United's transfer budget is that of a mid-table club? How have the Glazers and Ineos managed to get that into our fan base, where some of our fans are so unambitious, they actually sit there and go, but we can't buy these good players because we can't afford it? I think that's disgusting. Do you want to know why we can't afford it? We can afford it. We can afford it. That's the bottom line. We can't afford it because the Glazers say so. But we can actually afford it. We do make the money. We have got the means to make it happen. You speak to Newcastle, you speak to Villa, they would love our situation. If we were owned by the Saudis and they owned Man United, they would find ways to spend the money. Same at Villa. They can't do it because their revenues are low, FFP fucks them. Man United can spend the money. We are allowed to spend the money. FFP probably allows us to spend about 300 million this summer. We don't spend the money because the owners don't want to spend the money. So when you hear people going, Man United can't afford Elliot Anderson, you do need to call it out, because we can, we just won't. So we can't afford is not actually correct. We can afford it. If you scrutinise the financials at Man United and the revenue, you can actually find a way to spend £300 million this summer. We don't do it because of our owners, and that's a very different thing. Saying we can't afford it makes us sound like Everton or Newcastle. We can afford it, we just don't want to pay it, which is a very different thing. And it's, you know, it's probably unacceptable that that has entered our fan base. I hear a lot of people saying it.